Erase that. Okay, next. And again, as I was saying, this account of this first part of chapter 3.1 is an analysis of 1.5 pages, right? This is not a lot of, I haven't even really started, or Rand rather, not Rand hasn't really even started chapter 3. This is the first page and a half of chapter 3 that I'm attempting to sort of solidify in this particular lecture. And also, hopefully you see the relevance that it has, right? I mean, for whatever reasons, Rand has her problems among philosophers, some more obvious than not, but her epistemology, I think, hasn't received the recognition that it deserves. And I think it should be recognized, which is in part why I'm doing this this series on her epistemology. All right, so now more to the precise relationship between our linguistic abilities and linguistic abilities and concept formation. Chapter 2 is about concept formation, so we know that. I'm not going to go through concept formation at all. What I'm going to do is talk, and what Rand does is she talks about how our language now relates to the previous discussion on concept formation in chapter 2. Okay. So this is language. So this is language and concept formation. First thing, very, very important, the idea of meaning. The idea of meaning. The idea of meaning is very, very, very important, right, in philosophy. It's one of the, if not the most important concepts in all of philosophy, right? The whole idea of coherence, the whole idea of contradiction, the whole idea of our logic is in a sense based in meaning. This might not make sense to some of you, but for those of you who know logic, there was a distinction between sort of symbolic and modal logic as logic that participates in truth functionality. And fuzzy logic was sort of does away with truth functionality. But the one thing that solidifies and connects both fuzzy logic, which I don't think I've done a video on fuzzy logic yet, but which connects fuzzy logic with modal and symbolic is the preservation of meaning. It is, I wouldn't say it's impossible. I don't know that it's impossible, but I can't think of it now. It's probably improbable that you could give an account of the role of meaninglessness. The only account that was ever really articulated, and some philosopher out there should revisit it. I don't have the time to do it, but I think it's a very interesting account. Was David Hume. Right? Hume talks a little bit about meaninglessness, of what does it mean to be meaningless, right? But I think there's a lot more that philosophers should and could be doing in an epistemology of meaninglessness, right? That would be a phenomenal dissertation idea, a phenomenal book. I'm not going to write the book, but for those of you who are philosophers that are interested in writing something new, I think an epistemology of meaninglessness would be amazing. What does that mean? Well, watch the video. I have a video called Hume's Fork and Kant's Synthetic A Priori, I think is the name of the video. So just put in Hume's Fork and it'll pop up in that video series. Basically what ends up happening is that I'll give you the super brief version. Hume looks at something like A equals A, which is T-A-U-C-O-O-G-I-S. Hume looks at something like A equals A, and A equals A is true, right? So that it does have truth function. We say that A equals A is true, and Hume says, great, it is. But what Hume says is that it is true, but it is ultimately he says it is true, but is ultimately meaningless. You are stating a fact of the matter. But the fact that A equals A hasn't given me cognitively extended my conceptual understanding of what this relationship is, other than the relationship is its own relation. Right? So Hume says, and some people disagree with this, some people agree with it, doesn't matter, I'm not going to get into the argument between that, but for Hume, Hume says that this is ultimately meaningless. You're not saying anything that has any particular meaning. In this sense, and I'll tie this into Rand in a second, in this sense, Hume uses this idea to construct, and he talks about this in a very, very small section, the missing shade of blue. And basically the argument is, imagine we go from navy blue to, N-A-V-Y, if I could spell it right, navy blue to sky blue. Navy being a really, really dark blue, sky blue being a really, really light blue, and here's the spectrum. And the idea is, imagine that I'm looking at the spectrum and I see the colors gradually getting lighter, 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 right? Or I go from the other end and I see that the colors are getting darker. But somewhere in this spectrum there's a missing shade of blue. The question is, can my mind, do I have conceptually the ability to posit, to create, to deposit? Do I have the ability to posit this missing shade of blue? Can I conceptualize what that thing might be? And there's debate about the answer, but the answer is no. You can't, right? You don't have the ability to conceptualize what that thing might be. I can't know what that thing is because it doesn't, there is no way of, there is no, and I don't want to use a technical term yet, there is nothing with which, in Randian account, there is no perceptual existence, right? So in a Randian account, Rand would have to agree with this, right? She would say, no, you can't have an understanding, an idea, an image, a concept of the missing shade of blue. I can have the concept of the missing shade of blue, but that concept doesn't refer to anything, right? I can talk about it, but insofar as I attempt to talk about the missing shade of blue, what I'm doing is meaningless, right? Because insofar as we are discussing meaning, meaning is itself buttressed, and this is what she says. Meaning is itself buttressed as a result from the differentiation and integration of concretes. Words denote perceptual existence, right? Words denote, not connote, right? Words denote perceptual existence, and that's the key, right? Words for Rand at least, perceptual. Words denote perceptual existence. Insofar as I am attempting to talk about the missing shade of blue, the whole conversation around the missing shade of blue becomes immediately meaningless if I, and she does, define meaning as the relationship between words and perceptual existence. This perceptual existence is missing, hence the missing shade of blue, right? Missing, right? There's a missing perceptual existence, so anything that I do, anything that I say to describe this missing perceptual existence is utterly meaningless, right? So that would be, if you wanted to do, if you were interested in doing an epistemology of meaninglessness, and, you know, this is off the top of my head. There might be something more subordinate than that. I haven't thought of it yet. This is just sort of freestyling. But if you were to do an epistemology of meaninglessness, then your epistemology would have to start at that point, if you're a Randian, right? If you're not, there might be some other starting point, but in sort of objectivist terms, your epistemology of meaninglessness would have to start with a recognition that meaninglessness begins with linguistic articulations that do not have relations to perceptual existence, right? You can think you're talking about something, but what you're doing is meaningless. Okay.